I've done some short videos sharing pieces of our journey to getting an autism diagnosis for my son, but I've never sat down and really shared the whole story. And when we were seeking a diagnosis, I found myself looking at a lot of videos, looking at different things like what were your first signs? What were the things you noticed? And I found these videos comforting. And so I thought, well, maybe I can do this to help someone else out there. Or even if you already have your diagnosis and you're sitting down to watch, maybe it just helps to comfort you because you've had a similar story. Hearing other people's stories and what they've gone through can help us just all feel more connected. So, wherever you're at in the journey, I hope that ultimately this can give you some information and be encouraging one way or another. On TikTok, I asked a question that I got a lot of responses about how long the autism diagnosis journey took. And I was surprised by how many people had an even longer wait than we did. It took us almost a year from the time we requested the diagnosis to actually getting the appointment and getting the diagnosis. That was a year. But a lot of people were saying it took like 2 to 3 years, which, whoo, some people it was a couple months. So there's like a range, but I know that some people are in a really big holding pattern. I also did another prompt where I got a lot of responses about what advice while you're waiting for a diagnosis. So I'll make a whole other video compiling those responses because there were some really great things on there. But anyway, for us, yeah, I wanted to get into our story and what I noticed, what I suspected, and my suspicions were correct. So ultimately, we got our diagnosis. So when my son, I think he was 18 months old, I just got this sense that something was going on. And what's different from my story than most people is my son has a twin brother. And so oftentimes you have siblings where you have a neurotypical sibling, but I had a very direct comparison, right? 2 minutes apart. Not that I try to compare my children, but it was around that 18-month mark that I started to really notice, wait, we're developing very differently here between the two children. And I wonder if it would have taken me longer to notice if I didn't have twins, but it was definitely looking at the two of them. And in particular, there was one night that I was doing just a regular diaper change before bed, as one does. And you're looking at them on the table and we sing and we talk and, you kind of play, make goofy faces, whatever. And so my neurotypical twin was very interactive and just, ah. And then my autistic twin was kind of just looking off and looking around. And I'm sure it had happened before that was what he was like and how he responded to the world, but it was the first time I noticed it really distinctly. And I found myself then looking at videos for signs of autism. And I'll share at the end of this video all of the signs that were there, because looking back on it, there's actually a lot, even from early infancy, that were some signs. But it was the first time. I have an older son, but he's adopted, so we didn't adopt him as an infant. So I had never had babies before. And so when I would look up certain things that he was doing, and it was like, oh, a lot of toddlers bang their heads or whatever, which I'm like, I don't know if that's actually true in hindsight. But what I had kind of looked up that were many concerns, either I told the doctor the concerns or whatever, and it was kind of like, oh, at that age, it's normal, right? So trust your mommy gut if you're thinking maybe something is not quite typical, right? Okay, so I found myself looking up the videos, and a lot of them were talking about shared play, like, oh, do they go up and share a toy with you and try to show it to you and all of those things. And so I remember trying to test him. I was playing with him and trying with different toys and seeing what he would do. And I didn't really there wasn't a definitive thing in that initial trying to play, because he was playing with me, but not that much shared interest. But his twin brother didn't necessarily have a ton of shared interest with me either. So I was like, okay, maybe it's fine. Maybe he's just still young. And It wasn't until Christmas that year, which he would have been 21 months old, that I knew, okay, for sure, there's something happening. So I'm a teacher and I was working full time, and my husband was working from home. So he was the primary parent who was home day to day. And so my son was really, really close to him. And he is a composer. So he had a big deadline for music composing project. And so since I had 2 whole weeks off for Christmas break, we decided that we would go 2 hours away to my parents for Christmas, all as a family. And then he would go ahead and drive back for a few days and get the project done. And when he left, my son had a complete meltdown like I'd never seen before. And then the whole few days that my husband was gone, my son was just out of sorts, not himself, like regressions like I'd never seen to that point. And then when my husband came back, this is what was really weird. It was like, wait, okay, there's absolutely something happening. My other children came and they're like, Daddy, and they come and give him a big hug. And my autistic son looked at his dad like, I don't really know you, and then walked away. And over the next few hours, they re-warmed up to each other and he was happy to see him and all of those things. But I was like, okay, there's something is happening here that is different for sure. In January at their wellness visit, we went ahead and put in for a referral from TEIS, which is the Early Intervention Service assessment, and then for an autism assessment. And it was interesting because my husband was the one who actually went to the appointment. He filled out the questionnaire, and I probably would have been more strict with my answers, but based on the questionnaire, it was kind of like, oh, wait and see. He's probably not autistic, which is kind of funny because when he actually was assessed, he is considered level 3. He's on the cusp of level 2, level 3. It was just by a point difference, but nonetheless, very much not a question, right? He's autistic. And all that to say, it was quite a journey. So over that next year, between highly, highly suspecting that he was autistic and then getting the actual diagnosis, we were able to start early intervention services. So it was development therapy, speech therapy, and occupational therapy. All of those things were just once a week. So they weren't, intensive, but they still helped us. They gave us some ideas. Occupational therapy in particular was very helpful. And through the course of that year, again, we knew that he was autistic, but it was weird because we couldn't really officially label it. And even when we're talking to the therapist and stuff, and they know too, but none of us can officially say it, right? They're professionally not allowed to officially say it. And we're like, oh, we suspect he's autistic, right? Even though we all knew, let's face it. And so we're trying to figure out, over the course of that year with the different therapists, we were able to get some ideas and some things to help to support him. I've shared in some of my other videos, they were giving us some visuals and stuff that didn't really work that well for us. So I actually am making my own. I'm making a whole course and visuals to sell. So let me know if there's anything in particular you'd be interested in, but I do have a free starter pack in the description below as well. So as we continued in the year, he was continuing to not develop speech. He had a few words around 18 months old that he kind of lost. And around 2, he was basically had no words. And with speech and stuff, we were slowly making moments of progress, and we would kind of see progress and see it help and then pull back. But occupational therapy was very helpful. Even just the hour a week that we had, we were able to talk to her, and she gave us ideas, and we discovered that he's sensory seeking, and we learned what that even means. And so for him, deep pressure squeezes, lots of sensory input can help calm his nervous system. And so we were able to implement those things even before the diagnosis. So my encouragement to you, if you're in the midst of waiting for a diagnosis, and that's part of why you're watching this, is to seek whether pediatrician or early intervention in your state or whatever it is. Don't just not start anything because you don't have the diagnosis yet. See what you can do and who you can talk to about your child in particular, so that you can get the process started of helping your child. And we finally, a year after the referral, got the actual assessment. It's long, I think it was 4 hours of a psychological evaluation. They did all kinds of stuff with him, and it was determined that yes, he is autistic. And I will say something too, if you're in this journey of trying to figure it out. It was more painful than expected to actually read the report because it focuses on the things that your child can't do or the places where your child is behind. And it's a diagnostic criteria. There's a purpose for it that can help with therapies and stuff so that they know where to start. But it's hard when your almost 3-year-old is being put in like the equivalent of 11-month-old in several things. And then all these things are like less than first percentile, less than first percentile, less than first percentile. And yeah, it, it's not that easy to read, even when you're expecting the diagnosis fully. So just a little warning if you're in the process of figuring this out. And it continues when you do further assessments, you do IEPs for school, or you do an assessment for therapy, and it's a similar thing where they're being compared to what's expected of someone at an age much younger than them sometimes, and it's hard to read. It continues to be hard to read. As promised, I'm going to share all the things that we did notice in hindsight. So we didn't really know to look for it as first-time parents of infants, but we saw it going forward. So some of the things we didn't see, and this is why I wasn't like totally sure, he didn't do, and he still doesn't really do hand flapping. And he didn't really do like tiptoe walking. The stims that he does do and did from a very early age is head rocking and head banging. So he would put his head back all the time. And we even had on his little high chair. And this is like as early as 6 months old. We have video of this where he was doing that. And we had to actually add a blanket. We had to duct tape a blanket to his high chair so that he wouldn't like hurt his head. And then he would do that on the crib too. And so we actually had to move him from a crib to a pack and play because it was at least soft mesh, because he was going back and forth and hitting his head over and over again. And that's where I'd shared earlier in the video, I looked up what that means. Like headbanging, is that normal? And like, there's all these things saying it's normal, but again, if you have an instinct that there's something going on, talk to your doctor, go ahead and get a referral because the diagnosis can take a while. Other things, particularly, so he was really interactive and he would laugh and stuff with us, but he would also get very fixated. So fans, even from an early age, we would joke like he would see a fan and that's all he'd do is stare at that. Even like as a 2-month-old, he would be in the little swing back and forth. And listen, babies are fixated with little mobiles. That's why they're on the things. But he was just more so for sure than his twin brother, fixated on the round and round mobile. And we would go to like the zoo and stuff, and the other kids would be looking at the animals, and all he's doing is like finding fans. And we still point out fans. We're in Costco. They have the big giant fans, and he loves going to Costco partly just for the fans. And helicopters are like his favorite thing because it's basically a giant fan, right? So the fixation and the rocking, stimming, he actually crawled first because he would rock back and forth so much on his hands and knees. And then he figured out how to crawl from there. And aside from that, as it continued, it was, he was starting to gain vocabulary and he regressed. And as time went by, and as I said, his twin brother got more and more interactive, more and more communicative with us, he kind of stalled and even regressed. And so all that put together gave us the information we needed to know that we needed to seek help and therapies. And so wherever you're at in the process, you're not alone, and don't be afraid to seek help and support because it does exist out there. It's not always that easy to find. It's not always super straightforward, but it does exist. So I would say start with your pediatrician because they often have good connections. And then even like Facebook groups and stuff, if you have local like special needs support Facebook groups, you can do more general like autistic parent support groups asking, but it might be helpful to also have something we're in a group that's more local to your area because they can actually recommend like specific doctors and tell you what the wait lists are. And if you're in the state, different states have different rules and everything. And so they'll have people who've gone through the process before who can give you that specific information that's closer, at least, to your situation. I hope that this video has given some encouragement, even if it's a little bit hard to hear or a little bit sad. But ultimately, all is okay. It was okay. We're learning every day to love him more and to grow with him and to be with him and to support him. And you will be able to do that for your child too. I hope you have a wonderful week.